Greetings to you all. This is my second day here at ISE 2025, and I will continue to explore all the exciting tech brands presented here in Barcelona. The legend says that after the release of one of the original Star Wars movies, George Lucas went into a local cinema to see how his movie was presented. What he saw was far from what he had envisioned. That day he came up with an idea which later became known as THX, the audiovisual reproduction standards for movie theaters. For many years the residential AV market has lacked a universal benchmark. Home cinemas have been built following varying recommendations, leading to inconsistent results. However, the situation might be changing now. Today here at ISE 2025 with Walt.
Hello.
CEDIA.
Yes.
Thank you very much for coming.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And with Peter, the volunteer for CEDIA.
Hi.
Thank you very much for coming as well.
Pleasure.
So, first question. For those who are not familiar, could you please tell a few words about the CEDIA as an organization?
Yes. CEDIA stands for the Custom Electronics Design and Installation Association. So we are an association for integrators who install whatever type of products there are, whether it's security or it's multi-room audio, it's home cinema, it's blinds, it's lighting, all that stuff. And we do. We're involved in two trade shows. We have the CEDIA Expo, which is in the United States. We're half owners of the ISE show. And we are focused towards the residential market. And we do training and education, certification, of course, standards, which is why we're here today, and also a podcast. But short and long of it is we represent integrators that install technology.
So, Peter, could you tell what is RP22 and who came up with the idea of its creation?
RP22 is actually an update of a document originally released in 2009, when back then it was called CEB22. And in around 2015, 2016, we realized that that document was very, very, very out of date. Between 2009 and 2016, immersive audio really exploded. We had Dolby Atmos and DTS:X and Auro 3D. And that was the foundation of us realizing we needed to update the documents. The basis for the whole thing, I'm going to give you an analogy. Mm-hmm. If you're looking to eat at a fantastic restaurant, the thing you will probably research is the chef. You will find a great chef and you will trust that chef to deliver you a great experience. It's unlikely you're going to phone up and go, tell me what raw ingredients you're using. Where did the tomatoes come from? Who grew your potatoes? What breed of cow was the beef from? You're going to trust that chef to use the right raw ingredients to deliver you that incredible experience. Now, here at ISE 2025, this is fundamentally a raw ingredient show. And what we need to acknowledge is that we as integrators, we are the chefs. So you have the chef, you have the ingredients. What goes in the middle? The recipe. So RP22 is a recipe, and it doesn't talk about specific brands or specific raw ingredients. And with everything we're trying to do within CEDIA standards, it's to try and bring a more engineering approach to the delivery of incredible systems. Because at the moment, people think that if they have the best raw ingredients and they just throw them into a room, that you're going to get a fantastic result. It's like if you give me the finest raw ingredients of food available to humanity, I'll do all right. If I'm lucky, I might do magnificently. If you give those same raw ingredients to an amazing chef, they will create an amazing experience. So we're just trying to bring engineering back to the creation of these incredible spaces. And we're doing that with a series of recommended practices, of which RP22 is only the first. There are many, many more to come.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And is it a secret? So what's coming up next?
Not a secret at all. Probably the most profound one, the most impactful one, is something called RP1. Because it's the beginning, it's the genesis, it's the most important. And we're colloquially calling that performance facts. Mm-hmm. And that's a recommended practice to manufacturers to say, please give us engineering data. And as an example, and when I say this to those of you listening to this podcast who come from the commercial world, you'll probably go, well, yeah, that's what we've always done. But in the residential world, no.
Oh, yeah.
We're getting rid of watts. There will be no more watts. We're going to be having short, medium, and long-term voltage capability. And that's for both amplifiers and speakers. So that's just an example of how we're moving away from a consumer approach to much more of a professional approach to say to manufacturers, please give us this data and create that data in this way and format it in this way.
So basically, Gene Dalasala from Audioholics won't need to perform his bench test anymore.
Well, no, we should have spinoramas and heat maps and all that stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, and more.
Nice.
And I haven't finished. That's just RP1. There's also RP23, that's video design, which is a video half of the overall thing to RP22. We're also now working on RP32, which is measurement and verification. Because RP22 is an on-paper verification exercise. You do all the work in RP22 before you've built the room. RP32 is saying you've promised the customer a certain level of performance, hopefully based around RP22. Now you've built that room, get your microphones out and measure it to check that you've delivered what you promised, and that closes the circle.
Yeah, and everybody measures in a different way. So we're doing a recommended practice for how to measure and also how to measure for each level.
Basically, yeah, I understand. So unifying all the steps of the creation of the cinema rooms or
Yes.
listening rooms. Nice. That's good to hear. Could you share who are the experts behind the creation of RP22? Who are the
Yes.
people, engineers, industry professionals who took part of creating those practices?
Yeah, so in CEDIA standards, we really need to have balance, and we think balance is incredibly important. And we also follow the ANSI process. We're an ANSI accredited standards development organization. So that means there needs to be consensus and it needs to be balanced. Like one person can't rule the roost, if you guys use that term. And it needs to be really balanced. So we want that for several reasons. A, everybody has a different perspective and has a different reason for wanting to be involved. So in the case of RP22, we had, in general, we had manufacturers, we had integrators, we had acousticians, we had protocol people like DTS and Dolby, we had content creators. All those people came to the table with their with their experience so that we could holistically say, because what's different about RP22 is this is people with, if you put everybody together, hundreds of years of experience actually building and designing rooms, and in particular, small rooms. Small room acoustics is, and he will attest to this because that's his life. He's a cinema designer, and small room acoustics is really hard, way harder than a large room. And a lot of these things that, like when THX originally got started, that was for an exhibition space. We are experts at small rooms, so we have taken this stuff and said, right, how do we reproduce? And our ultimate goal is to just reproduce artistic intent. How do we do that in a small space? And everyone with their experience got together to do it.
Any specific names?
Sure. We had Anthony Germani, and we had Arnaud Labouré. We had brands like Trinoff. We had famous acousticians. We had
I'll give you a few.
yeah.
We had a gentleman called Craig Eggers, who was one of the original team of 4 who invented Dolby Atmos. We had a gentleman called Brian Long. And going back to your THX story, Brian Long is supervising engineer at Skywalker Sound. So, he's a content creator. So we had people from the content creation side, from the format provider side, from the manufacturing product side, and then people like me from the coal face, as it were, people actually designing and building those rooms.
It's science. It's you have to have a scientific approach on.
Can I say something controversial? You know I'm going to say it, don't you? Craig, after this effort was done, said this is really what Dolby wanted to do. So, I mean, when they first released this stuff to the public, it was different. They had to make it easily understandable, diagrams, things like that. But when we really dove into this and created this, Craig Craig said this was right in line, did not breach anything that goes against. That's another thing to make sure people know. We are not reinventing Dolby Atmos or any other immersive format. So it's all supportive to all of it.
And I'm going to say something controversial now.
Good.
Dolby Atmos is not a standard. It's pay to play.
Yeah.
DTSX is not a standard. It's pay to play. THX is not a standard. It's pay to play. All of those are brands that want licensing money. They want people to pay for what they do. Now, they're all incredible companies doing incredible work. But the fantastic thing about RP22 and all the CEDIA standards is everything we publish will be a free download for everybody.
Yeah.
You don't have to pay a thing. We're not doing it to make money. We're doing it to make the industry better.
And we'll provide you a link so anybody watching this can do the same.
Yeah, sure. The link to RP22 will be included in the description of this video. So could you tell about the different levels of RP22? I know that 4 of them exist.
Yeah. You want to take levels?
I'm gonna give you an analogy because I think
He's really good at analogies.
I think it's a better way of describing what the levels are about. We link everything in terms of the story that the content creator is trying to tell, and putting as little between the story that's being told and the person experiencing that story. So imagine you go into an art gallery and there's a picture hanging on the wall and it has a piece of museum quality glass over the picture, but it hasn't been cleaned in about 4 years. And you're looking at this picture and you're going, well, it's a landscape. I think that might be sky. I think that might be sea, but I can't really tell what's going on. That's no level at all, because you had no idea what the artistic intent of the artist was. You clean the picture a bit and you go, it's an impressionist painting. It's at sunset. There's a sea. Those are some hills. They're covered in grass. There's some animals. I'm getting a basic understanding of the intent of the artist. And that's level 1. So level 1 is fundamentally allowing artistic intent to be conveyed. I clean the picture a bit more. I can see brushstrokes. I can see texture. I can see color graduations. I can see deeper into the picture. That's level 2. I clean the glass so the glass is perfectly clean. It's a perfectly clean piece of museum glass. I can see pretty much everything. That's level 3, and level 3 we consider reference. Level 4, take the glass away. So there's nothing between you and the picture. My job as a cinema designer is the removal of distractions. I want to remove everything that is coming between my customer and the story being told in the content. And RP22 and RP23 as well, they're a fantastic guide towards cleaning and cleaning and cleaning that picture, then removing the glass so you've got nothing between you and the content.
Yeah.
You know, the other thing it does is when you would go to, let's say, installer number 1 and installer number 2 as a customer, you'd say, quote me a system. And the one installer says that's going to be $80,000. And the other installer says that's going to be $50,000. And then you say, well, what's the difference between the two? And you'll be like, well, I use these kind of speakers and I'm using these kind of speakers.
That's what I would say.
who knows? So
Yeah.
so what this ends up doing is, as a customer, you say, right, we're going to build a level 2 system. As an integrator, I'm going to say, I'm going to deliver you a level 2 system. So you know what you're getting. I know what I'm delivering. And most importantly, as a number 3, the manufacturer knows that their product is going to shine and work correctly. Because I can't tell you how many times I've been in somebody's house where they say, these speakers are awful. And I'm like, no, they're actually nice speakers. They just weren't the right ones to use. Or this amplifier is awful. Well, it's a good amp, but it's the wrong thing for this. So it solves all 3 of those things.
Okay. So I know that RP22 is 154-page document, but still, could you share a few key parameters that it addresses?
Why don't you say some of your favorites? Oh, well, I'll start off with one. This is one of our pet peeves, sitting against the wall. Side wall or back wall. That was one of the things that we wanted, and that distance gets larger as the level goes up. So that's one right off the bat that was important.
I'll give you another one. How many of the exhibitors here are about making things really quiet? None of them. Everyone here is about making things really loud. And if I wanted to spend my customers' money, I would spend the money first on making a really, really quiet room before I then made that room really loud. So within the parameters, we have different specifications from level 1 to 4 for the noise floor of the system. And that's based on noise criterion curves. So for level 4, we require a minimum of NCB 18 with a recommended of NCB 15. And we talk about noise control. We also talk about acoustics. Now, we don't give it many acoustic targets, because if you ask 10 acousticians for an opinion on a room, you're probably going to get 12 different answers. So there's very, very little we agree on. But one of the fundamentals is you're looking for a very, very linear reflection decay time for the room. So we talk about that. We talk about direct to very early reflection ratio. We talk about some of the acoustic materials and give examples of some calculations that you can do to calculate how much of an absorption and stuff you want in a room. Because it's a massive industry misconception that you want to absorb all the sound. And what you'll find a lot of dealers who aren't very good doing is they'll just put 25mm foam everywhere in a room, and it'll be a horrible, horrible, horrible sounding room. So there's guidelines over acoustics. We've got guidelines of how to achieve really, really even bass, because a lot of the conversation in RP22 is not just how to get fantastic sound for one seat, but how to get fantastic sound for everyone in the room. So we talk about different strategies for having really even seat-to-seat frequency response for bass.
And that just triggered two more people that I did not mention. Floyd Toole and Todd Welty were part of RP22. And
Floyd wasn't really.
Yeah, a little bit. Well, he kind of chimed in a bit.
Yeah.
True. But Todd was, and Todd gave us his all, because Todd really studied bass to figure out how bass works in a room and subwoofer configurations. So we have a lot of that information in there.
I completely agree, and especially on the part of making the room quiet. It's a little story from my public cinema background when I've done the video for BFI IMAX in London. That cinema,
My favourite cinema.
That cinema is in the middle of the roundabout, around one of the busiest routes in London. Also, it's two blinds running underneath, and there is a Waterloo station outside. And even in the foyer, you can still hear the noise. But the whole upper building, it stands on the absorption pads, which doesn't let any sound to get into the auditorium. But it's just, obviously, it's on another level. But yeah, making room quiet, as I understand, it enhances your dynamic range. So so you enhancing the quieter part of the soundtrack. And
so did you do the 70mm IMAX projector there? At the BFI IMAX.
The video, yeah. So,
cool. I go there a lot.
Yeah.
Because it's now one of only 2 cinemas in the UK that still has a 70mm analog film. There's 3.
Printworks, Manchester.
Okay.
Yeah. So Science Museum, BFI IMAX. You can check later, but I've covered probably like a dozen topics about IMAX. So
yeah,
and especially about the film. So yeah.
Cool.
Love it.
Okay. As its name suggests, RP22 is a recommended practice. Mm-hmm. Is there a plan turning into the internationally recognized standard?
So, no. Thank you. No, I'll actually explain. So, recommended practice is not a lesser document than a standard. There are 2 words that separate a recommended practice from a standard. Standard uses the word shall and can't use the word should. And a recommended practice uses the word should and cannot use the word shall. The reason for this is we're providing guidelines on how to design. And in our space, rooms are all different shapes and all different sizes and all different volumes. So we can't say, thou shalt put this speaker in this position at every time, no matter what. And in fact, we've actually gotten rid of exact degrees for that reason for speaker placement and done a zonal approach to help so you can design any space that you're in, because we're in some pretty weird spaces. You know, they're in homes. Some of them are custom built, and it's a completely dedicated room. Peter's involved in a lot of those. Some is, here's my space. What can you do with it? So you want to expand on that?
I think you've nailed it. RP22 and all the CEDIA recommended practices are a fantastic way to balance the compromises inherent in design. And I don't think it can ever be a standard, because standards are appropriate when you're doing the exact same thing over and over and over and over and over again. And that doesn't happen in our world. We never do the exact same thing over and over and over again. And the other reason we don't want to turn it into a standard is we'd slightly lose control over it.
Yeah.
Because it's a recommended practice, we can be very dynamic about updating it, adding new things to it. If it were a standard, the revision cycles would be a lot longer, and everything would just be much less agile.
For instance, what isn't in there is what to do about the center channel when you have a large emissive screen, because that's not really settled yet. Like when we did the original home theater, immersive audio was just being talked about, but it wasn't settled. So we don't have anything in there on that. And there's a lot of new base technologies now that have come out, but they're not completely settled yet. So we'll open up a revision when it is settled to say, okay, right, you have a giant emissive display. Here's recommendations on how to do the center channel. And when all the base stuff's around, here's some new ways to do base.
So basically, it's more like open architecture approach. So it's
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know, the other thing is, the great thing about standards is
There's so many to choose from.
there's so many to choose from. This isn't like a life safety. Like, you're not going to get killed because your base was wrong. So even though if it was a standard, it wouldn't mean you must use it. So
okay.
it doesn't
Yeah, it makes
really
sense.
help us that it's not a standard.
Okay, and as a conclusion, would you recommend any showrooms where you can experience the RP22?
There are not many. We have a demonstration facility where we have 2 rooms, both that have been designed according to RP22, but neither of them are public. So we're very, very selective about the people that come. I do know that a lot of showrooms now being built are using RP22 methodology, and I think we'll see a lot more of them in the future.
And I'd like to add one other thing to that. Manufacturers have also come on board with this. So we have manufacturers that we've been talking to that support RP22, are talking about it and are putting it in their literature. Now, you can't have an RP22 product. Like, this speaker couldn't be RP22, but they get exactly what we're trying to do. And they are also supporting us. And you can talk to vendors down on the floor in a residential area. Many of them will know of it and support it.
Yeah, the impulse response of that cuff is awful.
So no RP22 certified stickers on the products.
No, you
Never.
can't.
Impossible.
Impossible.
A speaker that could deliver you level 4 performance in a small room, you put that in a big room, it just can't. So there's no such thing as an RP22 compatible piece of hardware. RP22 is a system. The levels are system levels, not individual component levels.
It's a system in the room.
yeah.
It's the holistic thing.
So yeah, it's like a clock. You cannot take one part and expect it to work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So thanks again for coming. It was really exciting to talk with you, and hopefully that wasn't the last time.
Oh, yeah. I would love to be on again. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks for the interest.
Thank you.